Okay, let's take a look at this code. In this code, I have the calculation of the interest based on this amount, which is a double type variable, which is 12,618.98. And here we have 0.0013 interest rate. So when you multiply these two, you get this number, which has several decimal values. Okay, we would like to format this to print 16.4, right? And basically just give me two decimal values. So for that, I will use the print format. Okay, so in the print format, we're gonna have this type of statement. So here we're gonna have our format. It's gonna be established here. Notice that it changes from print line or print to print F, and here we're gonna have our different items, in the order we're gonna print them. Right? So for example here, now we're gonna change it from interest is, and here we're gonna have our first format, which we're gonna have a field of 4, okay, and then here we're gonna have two decimal values, okay, and then here we have the format specifier, which in this case is gonna be decimal values, and then here you're gonna see that %f is a floating point number, pretty much like this. Or you can use %d for decimal characters, etc., etc. Right? The most common one is %f, right? Because here you can define the number of decimal values that you want. Okay, so let's try that. So I'm just gonna now get rid of this line, and then I'm gonna use my printf. Okay, and then I'm just gonna run that. Notice that it's 16.4. You can play around with the numbers. Let's try a 1 and let's see what happens here. Right, we got one decimal value. Let's try 3 of them. Okay, we have 3 decimal values. Notice that my field is still 4. Right, so I mean this will be the lowest value. Let's go with a 6 and let's see what happens. Right, pretty much it's the same. Right, we don't have. Let's just put it together here and let's see what happens. Okay, you see it's together. Okay, so pretty much what is most important here is the decimal number of places. Okay, but let's look around and actually how this actually works. So let's look at a second example. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. Okay, and here you can see the format for the exponential, so you can try that if you want. Okay, let's look at this case here, right? So in this case, we have the number 1, 2, 3, 4, which is the first item, and here we're gonna use a %8d. So notice that we're gonna have 8 spaces that we're gonna define. Okay, here in the string we also have 8 spaces. Okay, and then for floating we have 8 spaces, 1 decimal value. Right, these are my 3 formats, and you notice that here I still gonna consume my 8 spaces, and then I'm gonna have my 1 decimal value, which is the 0.6. Okay, and here we have a 5. Right, so here is gonna be 8 spaces. Or you can use negative numbers, which mean that the spaces are gonna be after. Right, and you can see here the format, how that works. Okay, so this is basically the spacing between items. So actually we can try that. Let's just use another value. So I'm just gonna go with %8d, right? And then here I'm just gonna try the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then let me see. You see here we have the 4 spaces. Or if I go with 18, it should be farther, right? So that's the space between items. Let me just go with something small like 2. So that's 2 spaces. Well, actually I need to use 6 to have 6 spaces. The 4 by the numbers and 2 more. Okay, so I have 2 spaces, and here I will go with a negative, and I'm gonna say -14. So technically we have 10 spaces after 16.40, right? And notice that here now the spaces are after, right? And you can play around with the spaces like that. So my recommendation, either try my example or go in your textbook and then try this example and play around so you can get familiar with it. Okay. Also, get familiar with the operator precedent chart. Okay, and you can see here that we have uh, from the highest to the lowest precedence. This is if you don't use parentheses, of course, right? So we are familiar with the plus minus, multiplication, addition, and mod, right? But notice that here we have also different levels of precedence. Okay. Okay, so this is something to consider. It doesn't get that complicated because in the cases that we are working with, but as you grow in this field, if you go into something more complicated, this is something to consider, right? So here for example, we have a minus b plus c minus d. Okay, so we know that here you can just use the association rule. This is pretty much the same, right, without parentheses. But now here you have a equal to b plus equal to c equal to 5, right? So you can see the precedence here. So here you will do c equal to 5 first, okay, and then you will do the plus equal b, and then you will do a equal to b after, okay, because here you will have from left to right the association. Basically how this works, right? So c is equal to 5, and then the 5 will be added to the b, okay, and then the b or b plus 5, it will be equal to a, right? So a is equal to b plus 5 technically, okay. So you gotta be careful. In this case, you can say that you're reading from right to left, right? Something that we don't, which is different than math, right? We go from left to right technically, right? So once again, c is equal to 5, then that gets added to b, and then a will be, and then that will be equal to a, or a will be equal to that.